Well, hello there, and welcome to the bedroom of the dollhouse for another reading from The Secret Language of Birthdays by Gary Goldschneider and Hughes Stelvers for February 9th, the day of Vibrancy. That's right. And here at the top of the page is a visual representational image of the day of Vibrancy. Well, we have us an interesting one here. It follows a little bit of a theme. Boom! It is a drum, I guess you could say, if they focus here, a drum and a dragonfly. That's right. Now, what's the theme, you might be asking? Well, it's kind of the theme they've been introducing here in this Aquarius period. Really large things and really small things. But oftentimes there's a little bit of a disconnect there because it seems like the thing that's usually small is really large, vice versa. Here, not so much the case, but that said, still large and small. That said, does that have any kind of bearing on the birthday read? Probably not, but I like folks to see what's going on the page in front of me there. Keep you involved in the process if you like. That said, what is important around these here parts is wishing someone a happy birthday. That's right. So if it's February 9th and it's your birthday today, I just want to say happy birthday. That's what's important. But if this video finds you late, well, I just want to say I hope you had a happy birthday if that's the circumstance. That having been said, oftentimes people like to join us randomly or more ideally to celebrate. And so if that's the case for you, I just want to say hello, welcome, and I hope you enjoy yourself. Now, before I dive in with the redirect, and I will, there's something I like to do around these here parts, and that is roll some dice. That's right. This is the Diecast birthday broadcast, so I like to live up to the namesake, but I do so more importantly for synchronicity's sake. And oh my lord, folks, something I don't think I've rolled before, or if I have, it maybe happened one time before. That's right. Boom! Snake eyes. That's right. A 1 and a 1 for a 2. Now, what is synchronicity, you're probably wondering? Well, my friends, as I've heard it told, the universe will oftentimes put things in our path to help us realize our goals or manifest our aspirations. But a lot of times we got the blinders on to things like that going on in our lives. We're very singular or laser of focus as we get on with our errands, or, just throw the autopilot on as we get on with our commute to work. That said, we might not see the things, or if we do see the things, we might not lend them much credence. That said, this is a little bit of an exercise to get those blinders off so we can start picking up on the things the universe might be throwing in our path. And so we do so with a sign that we can't help but recognize. That's right. How do we do this exercise? That's right. We look for our numbers. That's right. Something we can't help but notice. That said, you don't have to go with the numbers that I rolled for you. The intention is there, but it's probably advisable you raid that old Yahtzee set you got collecting dust in the closet there and get your own set of dice so that if you decide to take part in this exercise, hey, you know what? You can ascribe directional values to number sets and time limits with which to go in those directions. That said, once you have all that established, pick yourself out a spot in this world that's maybe near and dear to your heart, or one you haven't really explored before. I always like to say the town square. Well, maybe not always, but oftentimes that's the example I'd lead with. So head down to the town square, get your numbers figured out and your directional values, etc., and set off. But that said, like I mentioned, get those blinders off, all right? And I say that because you never know. The day might start to take on just a little bit of a theme. Let's go with the directional, or the direction. Let's go with the visual representational image, like I mentioned, the drum and the dragonfly. Maybe you just so happen to start seeing dragonflies kind of cross your path. Hey, you know what? Maybe you see a big one. That's right. You know what? Go with some impulse here. If you have a desire to maybe follow it, see where it leads you. Maybe you keep up with it for a little while, but then boom, it just disappears. Well, you know what? At that point, I'd roll your directional value time limit and see where that takes you. Maybe you get onto the sidewalk there. Start heading north perhaps for 5 minutes, and at the end of this one, into this first leg here, oh, you know what, maybe you're not seeing anything else. No drums, no dragonflies, but hey, you know what, in such circumstances, just compose yourself, look around, and hey, you might just so happen to notice something really simple, like say, oh, what street are you on? Maybe you're on 2nd Avenue or 11th. Who's to say? Look at these numbers here. Or perhaps you happen to see like a bank sign and it's got the temperature readout 11 degrees. Hey, those things are often wrong, right? I would take such things as a sign you're on the right path. So, once again, roll yourself a directional value, a time limit, and head off. Maybe at this point, I don't know, maybe you see some drums, but it might not be an actual drum. It could be, say, like an advertisement with a drum incorporated into the visual graphics there, all right? Or maybe it's a big old mural on the side of a building. Again, use that as a sign you're on the right path. Just these synchronicities, these coincidences, some people might say. All right, see how many you can stack up. See how many you can drum up, if you like. That's right. So maybe at this point, the end of this next little jaunt here, I don't know. Maybe you get to the end of this, the end of the street. Oh, what's this? Boom! The dragonfly again. Or perhaps it's on the side of a bus, though. That's right, part of the advertisements, like I said. Hey, you know what? I'd use that as an example that's the universe crying out at you, but that bus blows right by you. You know what? There's your direction, I would say. So roll yourself a time value and head on out after it. Maybe at the end of this one, hey, you know what? Let's go with the drum theme here. Maybe you find yourself in front of somebody beating on a bucket there downtown on the sidewalk. You know what? Entertain it for a little while. Maybe kick them a tip or two, who's to say. But at that point, roll your dice. Maybe that individual stops with their drumming. They ask you what you're doing. In these particular circumstances, just be transparent with what you're doing, as crazy as it sounds. Show them your dice. Maybe show them this video. And as I often also like to say, maybe you find out it's their birthday too. That's right. Another coincidence, if you like. You know what? Maybe they're just so apt to pick up their bucket and their drumsticks and join you, all right? Because they're looking for a little bit of magic in this life too, especially if it's their birthday, right? And what's great about this is, as I hear tell, if you get more people involved in this particular kind of exercise, focused on the same outcomes, you're apt to generate greater results, all right? So maybe that was the whole point, meeting yourself a new friend, getting out there, just stacking up some coincidences. But like I said, if you see, taste, touch, smell, intuit, just a little bit of magic, hey, you'll understand why I brought it up. So let's dive in with the birthday read. I think you get the idea with synchronicity. Your month is February. Your day is the 9th. Your sign is 19 to 21 degrees Aquarius of the Aquarius III period specifically. And your quality and element is fixed air. All right, February 9th, the day of vibrancy. Those colorful individuals born on February 9 are attracted by excited happenings and at the same time generate a good bit of energy themselves. They are most often highly spontaneous and somewhat unrestrained, so it is their task to develop the capacity to buckle down when necessary. And by directing their energies rather than scattering them, they can be far more productive. Also, by reining in some of their enthusiasm, they will be less likely to burn out prematurely or expose themselves to harmful influences. And as members or friends, February 9 people are often relied on to raise the spirits of those most troubled. Themselves no strangers to suffering, more highly evolved individuals born on this day are masters at taking profound, often painful experiences from their past and making them the basis for an uplifting attitude that can inspire others. And they also have a way of turning potentially negative situations to their advantage. Especially in later life, those born on this day are often known as people who have paid their dues, and in doing so, are capable of understanding the difficulties others face with wisdom and compassion. And they often say with confidence, I've been there before and I know what it's like. And in a word, February 9 people are survivors, and therefore hold out hope to those who are experiencing misfortune or struggling with life's challenges. Not surprisingly, their sympathy and insight is highly sought after commodities in their social circle. And some February 9 people may appear beaten down by their experiences, as their body language speaks of emotional wear and tear, and yet they still struggle to remain positive and vibrant anyway. And such profound and interesting people are engaged in a constant battle between the dark and the light sides of their personality. They are fighters, aggressive, explosive, and unpredictable. And when they are in a great mood, it is as if the sun is shining. But when it is not, it is best for others to disappear quickly if they can. It requires a tremendous personal effort on the part of this type of volatile February 9 person to bring the more upsetting elements of him or herself under control, assuming he or she has the inclination to do so. And in fact, the willpower those born on this day demonstrate on specific occasions can be truly remarkable. But unfortunately, constancy and consistency of purpose can be sorely lacking. And many February 9 people are prone to self-pity and thus should avoid alcohol and other depressants like the plague. And most everyone born on this day will need to strive for stability in their lives. And part of this process involves depending upon an understanding mate and or very close friends and cultivating trust in general. Well, all right, quite the interesting birthday breakdown today. A lot of times in this period, the days have been very laser focused on the particular theme of the day or the things that happen to pop up. And in this case, I would say they rounded it out a bit for you, which I'm kind of glad they're doing, because for everywhere from the beginning of the Capricorn period on to, well, just a few days ago, maybe a week ago, everything was very hyper focused, which is a very, what do you call it, anomalous change of tact for the writers here and for the subject matter of the book. So I like when they round things out. Here they brought up kind of like what you do for other folks in their lives. They didn't necessarily speak to what you're like as family members or what your childhood was like. So we're still kind of in this way of approaching the theme here, where they don't necessarily round things out too much. But again, I've seen things much more hyper-focused than this. That having been said, I like to provide a little bit of a commentary on what we just read and maybe make some connections to days previous or even just the period in general. So that said, let's dive into some notes here, see what I had to say. See, February 9, the day of vibrancy. You're colorful individuals attracted to exciting events, but drumming up your own fair share of energy. You're said to be highly spontaneous and a little unrestrained. So right from the get, the reading claims one of your chief concerns is going to be applying yourself to specific tasks and directing your multi-fanged energies into more focused and productive ways. This mention of reining in your enthusiasm to prevent burnout is also interesting, as it's something that I encounter on some occasions there. The rare occasion, but I still encounter it. And it just so happened that I encountered it when I was writing this particular set of notes here. But it's a very unique issue insofar as I'll be so highly geared that I want to tackle just about everything in my life. But invariably, I can't, since, you can't tackle everything in your life, right? You can only really focus on what you're doing at the time, or else you're all over the place, right? Which then becomes its own frustration. Not to mention the unique feeling that you experience when you are able to drill down on just that one thing. You gotta drive up all your discipline to focus on it. But here, all the other things that you want to accomplish, they're pulling at you to just put that down and go work on that. But you can't. You have to focus that energy, or what they call enthusiasm. So I'm sure if I experience it just in that little part, you know exactly what I'm talking about if they're drilling down on it for you specifically. It was just crazy that it just so happened to happen to me while I was doing this. A little synchronous, if you like. Synchronous there. What else do we have here? So it's great to have that kind of enthusiasm and energy, I would say, but it has its own specific and unique drawbacks. But back to you, all right? The reading claims that as friends and family members, you're often the go-to to raise people's spirits, which if you examine your own struggles and then use them as uplifting examples to motivate people, it's a huge character trait and an ability, I would argue, that not everybody possesses. Most people, I would argue, they struggle just to come away from hardship without becoming jaded in life. All right, so if you can go the extra stretch to use pitfalls as a source of enlightenment, I would say you're providing a huge value add, not just to yourself, but other people. All right. And that's just something that, I don't know, there's nothing better than that to some extent, I would say. But in no small part, I'd say it's owed to this value of empathy, the value that empathy can provide. And I bring this up because also, as I was putting this set of notes together, taking a little bit of a break, I reached for a book that I hadn't been reading in years. What was the book? Well, it was Robert Greene's Mastery. He's the one that wrote the 48 Laws of Power. And again, I hadn't really touched this book in some time, but I don't know why I picked it back up a couple days back, and I dove into it. And where did I pick up on? They were talking about social intelligence. To say they brought up Ben Franklin as an individual who would take on empathy. And you know what? It became this huge driver for him to ingratiate himself and become successful. And I bring this up because it's very interesting to me that this is something that came up in the book, and it just so happened to be something that I picked up on in the other book as I was doing this set of notes. So another little bit of a synchronicity there, I would say. And so, like I was saying, the other things that with numbers, themes, all that, I mean, it can just be something as simple as that. Like I said, a lot of times people probably don't ascribe any kind of meaning to that, but I think those are just things that don't happen in everyday life unless we're looking for them. And you know what? It's nice to take a little bit of magic from the kind of things that the universe seems to be putting in our path that we maybe don't otherwise notice. So, in any event, just a little bit of a segue there. Let's get back to the notes here. Let's see here. So all this to say, in no small part, it owes to the dynamics of your nature. All right, and the reading claims that you battle those sorts of things, and those sorts of things. The reading claims that you battle a highly volatility kind of nature there, and you might vacillate between these states of being down in the doldrums or depressed, and then on a real highly energetic high there. But I'd argue that allows you the perspective that a lot of others can't readily access or necessarily take anything from. So you have this perspective that other people can't necessarily tap into, or so you're providing a value there for folks, I would say, if you're able to use that as a tool. So yeah, definitely step outside yourself and see what these things that are ostensibly against you, how they can be used, if you like. The reading claims you have the potential to be remarkable, providing you exercise the willpower. All right. But to this end is the idea of consistency. It's a huge factor into that. You have to be able to drill down on it and use it. Let's see. So don't let the fallow times wear you down, I would say. All right. I figure living with such things and accepting them as part of the process is just as important a tool. All right. Providing that you're able to frame it in that way as a tool. All right. So I think when it's something very interesting to do is just these things are plaguing you. They're just bothering you. You know what? Let them live. Live with it for a little bit. Give it its time. But then put it away. And those things are going to try to grab at you and take your attention away. You're like, you know what? I gave you your time. It's my time now. You're going to get it again for sure. But leave me alone for right now. I got better things to do. All right. But again, what can you learn from that also, I would say? Huge, important thing. So mostly being objective about it, I would say, which in no small part is a constant through line throughout the majority of the book. So in any event, went off a little bit of a tangent there, but that's what I had to say about your breakdown. So let's move on to your numbers and your planets. That's right, yeah. Those born on the 9th of the month are ruled by the number 9 and by the planet Mars. And the number 9 is powerful in its influence on other numbers. And any number added to 9 yields that number. E.g., 5 plus 9 equals 14, and 1 plus 4 equals 5. And any number multiplied by 9 yields a 9. E.g., 9 times 5 is 45, and 4 plus 5 is 9. And February 9 people are similarly able to influence those around them. And the planet Mars is forceful and aggressive, embodying male energy. And for February 9 people of both sexes, such powerful energy is made all the more explosive by the influence of Uranus, the ruler of Aquarius. All right, there you go. I know what's interesting here is they didn't really say that much, quite interestingly. The numbers and planets usually kind of drill back down on the traits that come into things, and they didn't mention much of that. They just got a little bit too bogged down in the maths there. That said, sometimes even though they put the maths in there, they'll go into the traits that come from the various planets. So let's see if I can pick up a little bit of the slack there in that regard. So the number 9 in the planet Mars for forceful, aggressive, god of war male energy. Influential power on others, and the, what do you call here? Thanks to the added influence of Uranus, some erratic and explosive influence. And even more power added into the bargain, it sounds like. Now, Mars is said to be an adventuresome, highly motivated to succeed, and generally unstoppable power or influence on folks outside of the aggressive nature. But Uranus, with its impulsive, rebellious, and individualistic powers, is also said to shake up and kind of electrify those planets that it's coupled to in its rulership there, to which in no small part may contribute to the frustrations and struggles that you experience. I've noticed this with a few of the other planets that Uranus comes into co-rulership with. And that's assuming that the breakdown applies. Maybe you're someone who doesn't struggle with anything, and all of this is like, what does any of this matter? So, but hey, if you're not one of those individuals and you have frustrations and you want to lend some credence to astrology, hey, that might be the reason why. Who's to say? What else do we have here? Interestingly, this is the first Mars day in this period that actually drills down on some of these aggressive tendencies and the natures that are said to kind of belong to Mars. The previous Mars day, to say specifically January 27th and January 18th, if you're interested in checking those out, they had more childlike natures and childlike approaches kind of baked into their birthday day, and very striking anomaly because the aggressive nature stuff didn't seem to present at all. Here we return a little bit more to form with the typical Mars energy there. So it's pretty interesting that that dynamic is all over the place and vacillating. And the Aquarius period in general seems to be bringing a lot of that to the fore there, especially in the health entry that we'll get into later here. That said, for better or worse, there's a very specific dynamic here at hand with your particular day. I can't say if it's for better, for better or for worse, one way or the other. It's kind of for you to decide. But you know what? Very interesting dynamics here once we kind of get past the entry. I'm a little surprised they didn't incorporate more because there was so much that they could have said, but they didn't. So that having been said, however, that is your numbers and planets. So let's move on to your tarot. That's right, your tarot. It's one of the more eclectic of the New Age metaphysical ideologies, but hey, it's here in the book. Sometimes we can make further connections, find some interesting things to kind of take from it. So yeah, let's just see what it has to say. We don't have to take it home and start dealing out the cards to see how it influences, like, say, our future or maybe predicts our every whim or flight of fancy. But yeah, let's see what it has to say and then leave it in the book. So let's get into it here. The 9th card of the major arcana is the Hermit, who is usually depicted walking with a lantern and a stick, and he represents meditation, isolation, and quietude. The Hermit also signifies crystallized wisdom and ultimate discipline. He is a taskmaster who motivates by conscience and guides others on their path. The positive indications of this card are stick-to-itiveness, purpose, profundity, and concentration. Negative qualities include dogmatism, intolerance, mistrust, and discouragement, underlying the tendency of certain February 9 people toward self-pity. However, the positive elements of this card should act as an inspirational model to all born on this day. All right. Very interesting. They personalized this tarot for you here quite a bit. I know it wasn't very much, but a lot of the times it's a complete copy-paste job and there's no personalization to be said. But they gave you a couple sentences, so there's an anomaly there for you. That said, let's dive into it here for you, the tarot card. The Hermit, representing quietude, isolation, meditation, for instances of crystallized wisdom and ultimate discipline. Nature seemingly opposed to your purportedly dynamic energy. Or is it? All right. I would say if stick-to-itiveness, concentration, and profundity, or intellectual insight, if you define that out, they are, as the positives there, that ultimately speaks to something that has to be overcome to even exist, let alone apply. All right? To say that this profound, vibrant energy that must be channeled and contained, if you like. But for sure, the negatives of discouragement and mistrust and intolerance are baked into that bargain. All right. But as you probably know, what value is said of an evolved nature, if there aren't, what value is said of an evolved nature if there aren't such struggles to take from as much? All right. So, like I said, I was thinking to myself, like, this doesn't seem to apply. And a lot of times, these cards, they're usually very apt, even just reading them on the surface level. But sometimes you got to get into the weeds and read between the lines to make it apply. And at that point, you're like, well, am I just kind of fitting this into the puzzle, taking this puzzle piece and cramming it in. And so you like it when it's kind of on its face. But I was thinking, like, you have to be, you have to have some kind of struggle underneath in order to have that crystallized wisdom. You have to have experienced something in order to come away with that. And you know what? As a person who isn't got this tumultuous, or probably the wrong word, but this highly energetic vibrancy to them, how can you have the ultimate discipline or this quietude unless you're actually suppressing something? That's right. Or otherwise, I don't know. I guess there is an argument to be had that you can have all those things without the other energy underneath it. But I would say it speaks to it if you are channeling and bringing the bearing and discipline to the fore in order to accomplish those things, to have the quietude, to have the profundity. There has to be something underneath it, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But anyway, that's what I came away with. I thought it seemed profound as I was writing it, but as I was reading it, hey, you know what, it didn't seem to make a lot of sense. So hopefully, as you're watching it, it does. Maybe when I view it back, it'll make more sense. Like, oh, it wasn't as bad as I thought, as I heard it in my own mind. But in any event, hey, that's your tarot. Hopefully you took something from it, some value if you like. But let's move on to your health. Oh, yeah, I mentioned your health earlier. Let's see what the book has to say. Those born on February 9 are prone to their darker moments, at least to becoming depressed and ruminating on problems in their lives. And for this reason, they must avoid drugs which reinforce this tendency, notably alcohol, it says in parentheticals. They must also be wary of mood elevators, which can throw them into an overexcited state. They would do well to pay more attention to their diets, which tend to lack sufficient planning and consideration of nutrients. And some born on this day don't eat regularly enough and may even go into an anorexic direction. Another reason for avoiding drugs which raise their metabolism. Only mild exercise is recommended here, particularly regular daily walks, yoga, usually combined with meditation, as well as breathing exercises, and or swimming. All right, this was an unusually deviation as far as the health was concerned. Not to say that they don't impart information like this, but they kind of largely pivoted in the way that they present it. Maybe I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's dive into the notes once again here. They said you're prone to becoming depressed and to ruminate on the darker moments in your life. See, I lost my place there. This isn't news, all right? I think we picked all that up from the breakdown. But it's important, I would say, and so it kind of bears reiteration. Again, you give these things their time, you learn from them, and then you put them away, so that you can have your time, all right? Because once again, they're going to show themselves again, right? To this end, avoidance of drugs that emboldens or suppresses either side of that duality is a decent suggestion, I would say. Focus on diet with regard to actually consuming food seems to come up now and then. So it's interesting that this presents for you. I can't quite drill down on the dynamic that causes that to pop up. Who's to say? No rhyme or reason, but it arises in any case. So there might be a historical precedent for as much to say they know of a few folks that were born on this day that had these issues themselves. I think in no small part that pops up on occasion and might lend a little credence as to why they make the decisions they do or impart the advice that they give. So what else they have? They said mild exercise, and this is interesting for a Mars day. And I say that as usually it presents in the form of vigorous exercise or combative sports. And I've kind of drilled down on the idea that it must be so that you can kind of excise those god of war like energies there. But here today, moderate, they said. Perhaps it's because you've got so much energy and you don't need to add in anything that, I don't know, upsets the apple cart, if you like, in those regards. So it could be a little bit of Uranus working its way in there and upturning, energizing things. And if you were to get vigorous and combative, it might not do you any favors. Also said here, the Aquarius body areas are the circulatory system and the lower legs and ankles. They didn't really mention anything about this, and that's a bit of an anomaly. Though not necessarily for Aquarius, they've been kind of avoiding that to some extent. But for the rest of the book, they tend to bring up the body parts and diets that kind of help with those things. And here, they didn't mention any of that, so that's why I say it was a bit of a pivot. And for the circulatory system, Capricorn came up, and their body area was the veins, since they often mentioned cutting out animal fats and dairy fats, ostensibly so you can keep cholesterol out of your diet. But Aquarius, they did pop up at least one day to try and cut out red meats. And I think, and no small part, that is for your heart health. I think it was another day that they popped up to avoid tobacco and alcohol and all these other vices, if you like, that would ostensibly harm your heart. And so I'd say that owes to the circulatory system. Also for Capricorn, since their area was the bones, they'd bring up taking supplements and vitamins and the like, ostensibly your calcium to help with your bones. And I would say that's a good consideration, considering the lower legs and the ankles. I would, might lean into a little bit of the skeleton there. But they also bring up embolism and stroke for the circulatory system here on a few of these Aquarius days. And so I've been recommending folks get their compression socks, try to head off such things at the pass there. Because in a lot of cases, folks don't pay attention to their health till their older age. And at that point, it's too late. And you got all the varicose veins. And if you had just had a certain kind of sock garment there, might have helped you out. So hopefully I imparted a little bit of value there, some suggestions that they didn't get to in the book, unfortunately. But that's why I'm here, to try to give you that information, maybe help you out in the long run there. So that's been your health. Let's move on to some advice. All right, they say keep your chin up, all right, and don't let yourself be dragged down by the negativity of others. Conserve your energies and consider carefully the effect you have on those around you and the demands you make of them. It's not always easy to know you. All right. Very valuable advice, I would say, but interestingly, I don't know that they necessarily drill down on too much of this particular stuff in the breakdown. Let's dive into it. I think I know why they kind of brought these things up, so let's dive in, like I said. So they said keep your chin up, all right? That's right, okay? You have the tools to break through to the other side of things, ostensibly when you're in those depressed states, I would argue. They said don't get dragged down. And interestingly, I think this has to do with you trying to bolster the energy of other people who are ostensibly in a bad way. And I hadn't considered the idea that maybe other people's baggage might have an adverse effect on you specifically. And so that's kind of where I leaned in with this piece of advice here. So you're not necessarily apt to help them break through if they're giving you their baggage and then it's bringing you down. So, have a little bit of a, compartmentalism with that, I would say. All right. What else do they say? Yeah, don't go full empathetic nature there. You take on too much of what they're doing, it might bring you down into that negative state there. I think I already said that, but here you go. Consider your effects on others, they said, especially when you're down in the doldrums yourself, okay, and you're influential there. Other folks might start to pick up on your negativity. Let's see, considering your influential powers, like I said. And they did recommend that others disappear when the sun isn't shining. And I would also say it's not fair on you to be saddled with other folks' issues if you need to work on your own, right? You need that alone time, it sounds like, so that you can generate the tools you need. And just spend some time with the depression. Learn what you can from it, I would say. And it's also what they say here, not easy to get to know you, okay? And transparency is a huge Aquarius theme and then slash recommendation. And I think this might be where they're coming from, though this didn't really seem to come up in the birthday breakdown, at least the way I read it. So it's important that people get to see who's behind the facade. Like I said, I don't think they necessarily mentioned that you were doing this here, but a lot of the other Aquarius days definitely have a bit of a facade that they put up, and there they can come off either cold and calculating or disjointed and disengaged from folks. And so they say to break down the walls, show your human side so that people can come in, get closer to you. And so I can only help but think that that's what they're going at here, since it was a big through line here. Again, I don't know that that necessarily applies to you so much based on the breakdown, but you know what? It applies to everybody in no small part, I would argue. There was one particular day where it wasn't necessarily a wall they had built up or a facade, but more of a veil. And so they need to be a little more transparent than what's shown on the outside. In any event, if that applies to you, it applies to you. But hey, that's the avenue I went down with it. That's the way it seemed to present. But that said, that's been your advice. So let's move on to your meditation. That's right. It's your birthday. You get a meditation. Something to reflect upon, if you like. All right. Your meditation. Fate itself is the ultimate Zen master. Interesting. A little meta there. It's a Zen koan that has Zen mentioned in it. Once again, fate itself is the ultimate Zen master. All right. Now, I don't know what to make of this one. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. But even if I did, I wouldn't tell you what I think about it. Because, you know what? It's your birthday. It's your meditation. It wouldn't serve you if I threw my spin on it for you. It might even influence what you might think about it. So that said, that's your birthday. That's your meditation. And with your meditation in the can, as it were, let's move on to your strengths and your weaknesses. That's right. Let's see where you got the girth, if you like, and where you otherwise a little more atrophied. All right. Your strengths, you're colorful, you're alive, and you're productive. All right. But your weaknesses, let's hold that objective mirror up and spin it to the side that blows up your face. Yeah, maybe shows off things you're otherwise a little more superficially insecure about, if you like. It's within the metaphor there. Your weaknesses, you're scattered, you're troubled, and you're long suffering. All right. Hey, you know what? We heard all this stuff in the breakdown. What's interesting is I didn't necessarily think it was as prevalent an issue as they're making it out to be with the weaknesses. Yeah, it came up a little bit here and there, but I don't know. I don't think I really drilled down on it being pervasive to that extent so far, insofar as let's make it a weakness, right? But that said, you know what? You're not the first person this kind of stuff has presented with, so I'm apt to think you're going to get through it. And I say all this because, often there was a week or there was a day that was maybe a month or two back, and impulsive came up as a strength, right? Well, the very next day, it traded into being a weakness. Now, they don't often duplicate strengths and weaknesses day in, day out. Happens on occasion, but it was even more random that it just happened to trade. And so I was wondering, like, well, geez, where's the disconnect? That impulsive is strength this day, but a weakness on the next? And it just got me thinking, like, it just depends on the situation as well as the individual. And so I like to argue here on these birthdays that your strengths are going to help you get over your weaknesses. But in the same circumstance here, your weaknesses can also be strengths depending upon the situation. You're colorful, alive, and productive. I would say when these weaknesses are being scattered, trouble, and long suffering, hey, you're an alive individual. You can throw some color, some light into those things that are weaknesses, all right? Troubled, hey, let's bring some color and some light to these things. Air them out if you like. Throw that transparency on it. You're also said to influence other people. Well, wouldn't it help break down the walls if you went to them with your troubles? You know, in no small part, I need your help, right? And I got to bring this light into this stuff and overcome these things. Can you help me? I'd say that's huge. It's dovetailing back into the advice. So the whole point here being says, I think your strengths are going to help you overcome your weaknesses. Now, the case to be made for scattered, troubled, and long suffering being a strength. I think we got to dive back into these being things that you learn from, all right? You can't learn from something you don't experience, I would say. Well, maybe you can by watching TV and being objective about something. Like, I see that guy doing heroin, and that's ostensibly the negative ramifications of as much. All right, I'm not going to do heroin. But here in this particular case, hey, you need those experiences in order to impart your magic on other folks, your influence, and your empathy and your sympathy. So, like I said, I think having those issues, that's a strength for you. That's definitely not the way I normally lean into these things, but scattered, troubled, and long suffering, those are pretty difficult weaknesses to turn into strengths otherwise in a very specific, how do we use scattered as a strength? I don't know. That's how I typically try to frame these things. But I think those alone are foundations upon which you can take and influence others. So yeah, we already said all of that by and large, but essentially that's just strengths and weaknesses. And so I often like to argue also, hey, don't get rid of your weaknesses altogether because they make you part of who you are. And I know that sounds a little bit counterintuitive there, like these things need to go away 100%. But again, yeah, there's just, it's such a hinged aspect of your personality and the value that you can provide for other people. Because if they weren't there, yeah, you wouldn't be able to be the person you are to provide the support that you do for other people, I would say. But in any event, those are your strengths and your weaknesses. So let's dive in with those born on this day. And when we get into those born on this day, not only do we get to see who shares your company, but something I like to do is look at it from the perspective of figuring out our passions. Let's see if we can drum up some inspiration to chase after our passions, right? Not just see who shares our birthday. I say this because too often in life I get out and meet individuals and ask them what they do, and more importantly, if they like it. And a lot of times they don't. And I think it's simply because folks get out of school, or they just got to immediately get into a job to help make ends meet. And so the fatal flaw there is a lot of times it has nothing to do with what they actually like. And I think it's important that we find something we like to do or something that drives us so that we can find life fulfilling. And I think this is the perfect opportunity to do that if we don't have that in our lives. Because if there's anything I can wish you on your birthday, is that you're jumping out of bed doing backflips to get into your day and find something fulfilling, a purpose if you like. So I think this is, again, the perfect opportunity to try and do that, to put the bug in your ear if you like and help stir up those fires chasing after your passions, because it takes time and energy and work to do that. And so we need to find the energy to start putting effort towards that. I think you get the idea, so let's dive in. All right, we start off with Alice Walker, the Pulitzer Prize-winning novelist of The Color Purple. We also have Mia Farrow, the film actress, foster parent of numerous children. We also have Brendan Behan, an Irish writer responsible for Borstal Boy, also a playwright, an IRA member, and it says drank himself to death at the age of 41. So there is some precedence, it sounds like, for these stimulants and these depressants affecting people in no small part. Be mindful there, I would say. So Alban Berg, another individual born today, an Austrian composer and follower of Arnold Schoenberg, and wrote the opera masterpiece Wozzeck. And we also have William Henry Harrison, the U.S. president, and routed Tecumseh's Braves at Tippecanoe and defeated British and Native Americans at the Battle of the Thames, or is it the Times? I can't remember, and died 31 days into his term. All right, I'm picking up on a theme here. Let's hope we break it. We also have Joe Pesci, the TV film actor, Carole King, the singer-songwriter, Bill Veeck, V-E-E-C-K, or Vieck, perhaps, sensationalist baseball owner, and a maverick manager, and famous incident sending in, it says, a small person as a pinch hitter. Interesting. We also have Amy Lowell, a poet, Joseph Szigeti, S-Z-I-G-E-T-I, not quite sure how to say that one, an Hungarian violinist. We also have Dean Rusk, Secretary of State, Ronald Colman, a British Hollywood romantic film star. We also have Katherine Grayson, the singer and film actress, John Ziegler, a National Hockey League president, Jacques Monod, a French novelist and Pulitzer Prize-winning molecular biologist, genetic protein manufacturer, apparently. We also have Robert Morris, the New York sculptor, Joe Dodge, the jazz drummer. We also have Bill Evans, a jazz tenor soprano, saxophonist, Holly Johnson, British bass guitarist and singer, famous for the band Frankie Goes to Hollywood, ostensibly a member therein. Let's see, we have Mrs. Patrick Campbell, the British actress, and Eliza Doolittle in Pygmalion. Pygmalion, I guess. All right. So that's the last one of those born on this day, which essentially rounds out the birthday read. I know it's a big-ass hard sell to take inspiration from other folks born on this day, especially based on what they did to get in the book. But like I said, hopefully if I can just provide you with a little bit of a bug in your ear about it, it can drive up some inspiration for you to get out and figure those things out for yourself, all right? Because there's nothing better than jumping out of bed in the morning and driving into something that you have a passion for. Personal fulfillment. Certainly going to help you get over any kind of depression you might be experiencing day to day, I would say. But like I said, that essentially rounds out your birthday read. Except to say your season is winter, your sign once again is Aquarius, of the Aquarius III period specifically. And your quality and element is fixed air. And what does that mean? Well, that's a different video altogether. I'll leave it at the end of the book or the end of the end of the video if you're interested in checking it out. But that having been said, this has been February 9th, the day of Vibrancy, from The Secret Language of Birthdays by Gary Goldschneider and you Stelfers. I have an affiliate link at the bottom of the description there for this book. If you're interested in picking up a copy, I have it right above a personal message for you birthday boys and girls there, ladies and gents. But book having been relayed, not altogether all too important there. Save the hassle, have to type it in a browser if you're interested in looking it up there. It makes an excellent coffee table book if you need something to help you break the ice in such circumstances. Hey, it's going to get the job done for better or for worse, like we said there. But book having been relayed, not altogether all too important. What is important, like I said at the top, wishing you a happy birthday. So happy birthday, all right? And for everybody else who joined us randomly or is here to celebrate the birthday, I just want to say I hope you enjoyed yourselves, took something of value from it, and are getting geared up to hear your birthday read. That's right. So I just want to thank you for the pleasure of your time. It's been a privilege to share your birthday with you. And lest I forget, that's right, your daily numbers. Haven't rolled a snake eyes in some time, if ever. So take it as synchronous there. Just like the book that I mentioned, and it went over empathy, all of that. Robert Greene's Mastery, if you're interested. It's a great one. But in any event, once again, hey, happy birthday, all right? Take care of yourselves. Use that depression or those doldrums as a tool and serve all those other folks out there that might be going through something similar. You got the power, the enthusiasm, the vibrancy, and the tools to make it happen. That's right. So happy birthday. Take care of yourselves. Oh, yeah, and get you some compression socks. That's right. Take care of yourself and make sure you're eating if you're one of those folks who just doesn't do so very often. Got to take care of yourself, all right? Happy birthday.